Hello, my fellow Vikings, and welcome back to the beautiful world of Valheim. It's a sunny day here in the meadows, the deer are prancing about, and we are ready to get to work on another home improvement video. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to sincerely thank you all from the bottom of my heart for the views and the comments on my previous Valheim home improvement video, which at the time of this recording has somehow amassed an astonishing 100,000 views. I'm utterly blown away by the response that video has received. Never in a million years did I imagine it would gain that much traction. I almost didn't even make that video because I wasn't quite sure anyone would find any value in it. It's been an incredibly rewarding experience reading through the responses to many of the comments you guys left. So again, just thank you from the bottom of my heart. This video is intended to be part 2 to that one. So if you haven't watched that one yet, I'll set up a link above or below or however the heck this YouTube video stuff works. And be sure to go check that one out first. So what is the purpose of this video? The previous video featured 10 tips to level up your wood house using only basic wood. You know, all the stuff that you could gather right in the beginning of the game in the meadows. It showed how you can start with a basic box-shaped house, add a bunch of simple little things using only basic materials to gradually and collectively transform that basic box into something much greater. In the end, we arrived at a beautiful looking wooden meadows house. This video is going to attempt to do the same thing, starting with the same basic box, except it will focus on 3 additional materials: stone, core wood, and dark wood. These are the materials you guys asked for a video on, so I'm here to try my darnest to live up to the expectation of my first video and deliver. Will I succeed? There's only one way to find out, I guess, so stick around. All right, level 0, our old friend, the basic wooden box, brought this guy in just to show that this is the same point of reference that we are going to start this build with. We're going to start here and we're going to add one feature at a time and slowly transform this into something much cooler than this basic original form. Not going to spend too much time here. Let's get on to the bigger and better stuff, just showing this as our point of reference. Level 1, our basic stone rectangle. And we can pet our little deer friend here. So we are building with stone in this build, so first step is let's transform our house into a stone house. And that's all we did here. Nothing fancy, just showing it as a point of reference. The only thing I would want to teach you guys on this step is when you're building with stone, you generally want to layer the bricks as if you're basically building with bricks in this manner, and that tends to look way nicer than, say, using these giant stone slabs and just slapping them on there. You lose a lot of the detail. It doesn't look as curated or refined or nice. So when you're building and you're always trying to create a cozy house, you want to use the cozier techniques. The only other thing I want to point out in this one real quick, we got our darkwood gates. These doors are awesome looking when they released with Hearth and Home. Much bigger upgrade from our regular gates over there. The only other tiny beginner tip I want to point out when it comes to working with stone, and only because this is a problem that you might encounter when building with stone that you wouldn't necessarily encounter when building with wood, is you want to make sure that the front face of your house, where you're going to be building your roof off of, is an even number of meters. So in this case, we've got 2, 4, 6, 8. But then if we were to wrap it around this way and we were to start our wall on this side, from that point, it would result in an odd number of meters, which is where we run into this kind of situation where our roof doesn't line up properly. You can't quite get them to meet nicely right there. So in order to prevent that, always make sure you're just using an even number of meters, and then you would get a situation where it lines up perfectly right there. And if it's, in this case, 8 meters, the pieces meet in the middle. If it were 10 meters, then you would end up on capping it off with an X instead. That is it. And let's move on. Level 2, add height. When working with stone, the main strength of stone is quite literally its strength. So I'm going to talk with a few of my tips. They're going to be aimed toward beginner players. If you're a veteran, you can scroll past a little bit. But I want this video to be useful for players at all levels. But I'm not going to assume beginners know everything. So just real quick, stone acts as a foundation for wood. When you hover over it, building like this, and you see the blue, that means that wood is grounded. It is acting as if it is on the ground right now. That means you can build from this point up as if it was attached to the ground. So stone quite literally allows you to build higher. So if we're building a nice stone building, we want to make use of that property and actually build vertically a little bit. So that's the first tip here, and we're going to expand upon that in future iterations, but we're just starting right now by adding a nice little layer of core wood up in the second floor here. So let's go inside real quick, and you see, changed our foundation to a nice little wooden foundation, added some wooden trim around the inside. Always important to try to do little details to make your place feel a little cozier. And then we got our core wood second floor up here. We got the sun rays shining through, and then our regular wood roof and the angled regular wooden wall beams up there. But this is all placeholder for now. It's going to evolve. Just wanted to kind of show, raise your house, build vertically, and then we can get our different levels in there so we can explore and expand and use different materials. That is it for this tip. Level 3, add an extension or shape. This was the add shape tip in my last video, except this time we're doing it up here off the second floor. And I chose to do this for a couple reasons. First being that I thought it would create this awesome little cozy space outside underneath here. And I think, we can do something fun with this later on in the build. And two, just because it's a little less typical. It's really common, you make an L-shaped house or a T-shaped house or a U-shaped house, and you make those extensions off of the first floor, but let's go a little wild and build an extension off of the second floor. Adds a little bit of variety. It's not something you see every day in a house, and we want to give our house a little bit of character. There are several technical things to show on this part of the build, and I do want to show a bunch of them, but before getting to any of them, I want to just remind you that the whole purpose of this video is not to show a step-by-step tutorial of how to make this exact house, but rather just to show the kinds of things that you can add to your house to build it up and make it better, like gradual improvements and a whole bunch of features and stuff. So this, I hope this will serve as inspiration and kind of ignite ideas, and that you can come up with something even cooler or just a little bit different and not just necessarily following the same exact things. But to go over some of the features that I got going on here, first thing I gotta call attention to is our old friend, the overhang roof. You'll remember this is one of my favorite tips from the first video. It just adds a lot of depth when you're looking up at it like this. And when you got the sun rays coming on this side, it casts shadows over on the surface of the house. You can see the different shadows, the shadow up here and the shadow up there. And that all comes by adding depth, and you can achieve little overhang roofs nicely by doing that. Real quick and easy. Just a reminder, you can again watch the other video for a little bit more in-depth tutorial on the overhang roofs, but it was accomplished in this build simply by adding these little 1 meter beams popping out from the top of our stone, and then we created these 2 meter beams as a perimeter around, and then we just attached our roof tiles to that. It was 1 roof tile, 2 roof tiles, and then a roof cap. And you just blend your roof in, make it, mesh right into your other roof. And when you're working with curved roofs like this, you know, you have to finagle them a little bit. But typically you want to work from the outside and then work your way in. So I created my overhang first, and then I built off of that. And now here's the wonderful thing about using these awesome darkwood roof tiles as compared to the thatch roof tiles, is that unless I'm highlighting over this, you can't really even tell that there's this weird overlap spot right here. The dark wood blends so nicely together, and it really hides those blemishes, and we'll see a little bit more of this later on as we build our further roofs. But if you ever need to hide some blemishes a little bit more, simply adding these angled wooden beams to complement and accent it really goes a long way to covering those up and kind of creates a nice little structure to your roof. As you can see, I added more beams going all the way across because it just kind of ended up on being this nice little, it looks like a nice little clean cut roof. Coming down here, we can't ignore these awesome columns. These columns, I believe, were invented by one of my favorite builders. He goes by the name of Verso. If you're watching my channel, you've probably already seen his videos because he's been around a lot longer than I have been on YouTube, and he's got, you know, he's way more popular. But he came up with these awesome columns, and the reason I added these columns here is because we've got this big stone heavy extension chunk out here, and when you have something that looks really, really heavy, I like to create a support that looks really strong, as if it could naturally support that stone. Now, these columns are not needed within the structural integrity system to support this, but I think it's always makes things look a lot nicer, a lot more natural if you build according to what your real world physics expectations might be. So you might notice you see this blue as I'm hovering it. So I do actually have some iron beams going across here, and the iron beams, there's an iron beam in the middle of this column that's grounded all the way down here, and that is what is helping support our stone walls up above there. So if you're trying to build up with stone, you either are going to need stone foundations, stone columns, and then you're going to need to use these stone arches. But if you want to avoid that, in order to achieve the cleaner look that I did here, I used a little bit of iron. It really wasn't too much. It was probably about 20 pieces of iron total. I of course am building in creative mode, but you want to be mindful of your material costs for when you're not building in creative mode. Let me show you just real quick how to build these columns. It's quite simple. You might start with, I'm just going to use an iron beam because that's what I started with. You're just going to hold shift on the ground, push it in about as far as you can. And now what we're paying attention to is this little corner down here. So we're going to take our wooden beam, hold shift again, rotate twice, and then just try to match up those corners. And if you do that all the way around, maybe with the power of video editing, we will poof to the finish and see a completed column. And there we have it, our completed column. The last thing to talk about before we go further with our stone build is to mention, when you're working with stone actually contains a third dimension as opposed to wood, which is just your length and your height. Stone contains this width as well, which is something to be mindful of when you're building, because the size of this on the outside is not going to be the same size on the inside. So I want to scoot around to the inside. Let me just fly up and in here. And then we can see on the inside, I built this with the inside in mind, wanting it to be about 6 meters in width. And look at this nice size we have inside this house now, the second floor. This looks like a nice space that we can do something fun with later on. And you can see the width offered by the stone shows up in the windowsills. Stone looks incredible, particularly in contrast with wood, and you really achieve that effect once you start trimming the stone with wood. So I've done that with all these windows right now, and again, these windows are going to be changed as we advance our build, but look how nice this looks from the outside. I particularly love this bay window edge where you get to look out. You can view your neighbor's house, you can view the trees off in the distance or the sun over in the water. Adds a lot of depth and a really nice look. But yeah, trim your stone with wood to create like a super cozy effect. One final tip is, I grounded these columns with these stone blocks, and you might wonder how I'm trying to add to my stone block, but I just can't get it to get in there properly. It's just sticking out the end. A general build technique that you're going to need to employ quite often when you're building in this game, when you can't get something to snap the way you want it, is you need to create a snap point for yourself. So in this case, I'm just going to create one using the same exact piece. I'm just going to build a stone block over here, and then I'm going to snap right into that. And that's not perfect, so I think I'm going to want to build a little bit closer. So I'm actually going to create that one to get my stone block that's a reference a little bit closer. And then maybe that'll be my reference there. And it's still not perfect. Of course it's not. But that's the idea. And you can play around with that to help yourself get your pieces where you want them. Level 4. External staircase plus patio. All right, we have adjusted the front entrance to our house. The old front door, you may remember, was right here. I have replaced it with some windows instead, and I have created this stone staircase leading up to a new front door. Now, an external staircase like this always looks really nice in a house. And again, these are suggestions. These are things that, you can add to your house if you're struggling to come up with ideas and something you want to do. That's what this video is all about, offering up those suggestions. So I created a cool little staircase, and I'll talk about the details of this in a second. And then a little front patio that leads to this new door, which lines up really nicely with the extension that we added previously. It's nice and centered. And I'm gonna fly back outside real quick just so we can look at that as I'm on fire. You look at the profile shot of this house, and you can see that this roof essentially just cuts all the way through. It's dead even. I built this patio specifically in mind as if this roof were to cut all the way through, because I wanted to keep that symmetry in mind. Now, before I get into the deeper details of this, I kind of wanted to talk for a minute about why I even decided to add the staircase. And it wasn't just because I had it in mind, I'm going to add an external staircase to this build. It might be surprising to some of you, but I almost never know exactly what I'm going to be doing with my house. I never know what it's going to turn into in the very end. My build process is very iterative. It's very, experimental. I just try the different things out. And often I encounter different ideas along the way, or I see somebody else's build on Reddit or YouTube, and I'm like, oh wow, that feature was really cool. It stands out to me, and I want to see how I can incorporate it in one of my builds. And then using that feature kind of makes me think about my build in a different way, and that springs a new idea and another new idea, and so on and so forth. So the kind of deeper conceptual tip here in this level is to always be a little flexible and open-minded about your house and about your build, whatever it is you're building. You don't even have to be building a house. So in this case, what really got me thinking was when I'm working with stone makes me think of basements. And so that got me thinking about kind of reimagining this first floor as the basement, and then therefore reimagining the second floor as the first floor. So that is what made me think of putting up my front entrance up here on what I'm now calling my first floor. All right, so to build the base for these stairs and this patio, again, I knew that I wanted my doors to arrive centered relative to the extension that I built out there. So I needed my patio to be right up here. So I did that. I created a bunch of stone blocks to build that base and get that patio up there. And then I started building my staircase down the side. I think I originally had 2 stairs side by side, but then it ended up on just being this super fat staircase. And I couldn't get like a smooth design that looked really nice. So I ended up on experimenting with like this kind of staggered tiered approach with the blocks on the side of each stairs, and I liked that. But in order to do it on one side, I felt like I had to do it on the other side to kind of make it look symmetrical and nice, especially with like this awning entrance I've got going on up here. But adding the stairs all the way from up there down to here kind of had the staircases ending right about at this point, which just stuck out way too far from my liking. So that's why I did a couple of things. One, you might notice this staircase is kind of indented. Really, the edge of the patio is right here, but I took the staircase and I built it in one full unit further. And then the other thing I did was, of course, I capped this off here and I added a nice little hanging brazier to light her away. And I did this, for a couple of reasons. The first reason being, as what I already explained, the staircase was just jutting out way too far. But the other reason being, I had already talked about how I kind of envisioned using this space out here later, and you want to kind of create natural walkways around your build. And so if I'm exiting my building and I'm going to want to get down to this space, it makes sense to have the staircase here. But, it also makes sense to have a staircase coming out the other side. I did create this kind of cuter, smaller, a little more diminutive basement entrance just because I created a main entrance up there. Didn't mean I didn't want to have a basement entrance anymore, so I just kind of tucked it away underneath here. It's a little smaller, and just dressed it up with a few features. We are working with dark wood in this build, so I used our dark wood arches and some black banners. I think I'm going to sprinkle a bunch of black banners around this build to kind of accent and complement the dark wood on the stone. I think the white on the banner and the black really works well with both the stone and the dark wood. It's probably still my favorite banner. So then you walk in here and you really have the experience of walking into a basement with these thick stone walls right before you emerge into the basement proper. So that's how I kind of reimagined this. And yeah, adding the little, for right now, T-shaped entrance here kind of really capped it off and made it look nice altogether. Level 5, add a prominent front face with subtips, add a curved roof, and a balcony. The front of your house is the side that you are going to spend the most time looking at. It's the side that, if you're playing on a multiplayer server, visitors are gonna come see first. So you want to try to make that look as striking as possible. So that's what I'm going for here. Before I talk about any of the features that I added to my house, I want to take a moment to point out that when considering which direction to build your house, you want to be mindful of the sun, and we want good sunlight, because sunlight shining on the front of our house is what's going to allow all those features to shine through and create the nice shadows and all of that. So in Valheim, in the world of Valheim, the sun rises in the southeast and it sets in the southwest. So I'm looking southeast right now. I think we kind of got some early morning sun, and we're getting a lot of sun on our house right now. So if I actually change the time of day to midday, 0.5, see the sun moves a little bit more over there, and still getting some sun, still shining on here. Time of day 0.65, that's toward the evening, and you see it kind of going down behind the trees over there, and we're getting a lot less sun. So this is like a nice morning facing house right now. So just something to think about. But as long as you angle your house toward the south, southeast, southwest, you're in good shape. Getting into some of the features here, first thing is I added a balcony. Balconies add a ton of depth from the outside when you're looking at it off to the side like this. This is the name of the game when it comes to really making your house pop out and start to look nice with a bunch of different angles and features. You want to add depth. So anything you can do to really just jut different things out of your house at different levels will create that. And I thought something fun to add right here would be a balcony. So from our inside, you can come out through your banners and enjoy that beautiful view, the sun shining in the morning. Maybe have your breakfast tea out here what I'm trying to do with the front entrance is use a few materials that are maybe I don't use elsewhere in the build. This way it really stands out. I think this is the only spot in this build that I end up on using glass, and that really makes the front feel unique, and it makes it visually stand out a little bit from the rest of the build. So same thing with these wooden shutters. As for the glass, you know, you can look and see what I did. The only thing that's maybe worth pointing out from a technical standpoint here is, you know, glass is, you can only build them in these square shapes. You can't angle them, so unfortunately. So what I had to do here was I just had to hide it with an extra little layer of core wood beams. If you knock out those core wood beams, you can really kind of see the blemish, how it sits there. But when I add the core wood beams back on, and if I can get that in up there again, it can be a little finicky. Maybe I need to put that one in there first. There, yeah, I don't know if that's perfect, but you get the idea. The whole purpose of the angle core wood beams here was basically to hide that the imperfection of not being able to angle the glass. So that's something you can do. All right, let's talk about this curved roof, since that's what really makes the front entrance pop. Curved roofs are achieved surprisingly easy. They're not as hard to do as you might fear. It really just starts with, instead of just trimming your house on the front by going alongside the face, just take that beam and angle it once. So in this case, I'm dealing with a 26-degree roof, so I'm using my 26-degree beam, and I angled it once, and then I extended that for 4 meters, angled it again, angled it again. Now you might notice with my roof, I'm dealing with a pretty short roof. It's just 2 roof tiles and then the middle, and I couldn't quite achieve the angle I wanted to by just building right here off of the natural corner of the roof, which was right there. That made it pop out to about this point right here, which added a little bit of depth, but I wanted a little bit more. So in order to achieve that, I simply extended the beginning point of this out by 1 meter from here, and I used that as my new starting point, and that allowed me to do 2 beams here, 1 beam turn, and then 1 more beam turn, and then that connected nicely on the other side right into a point there. And then I used our old friend the dragon. He's an oldie but a goodie. He's a classic dating back to the original Valheim when it released in February of 2021. Still looks good. So yeah, I did that, and it just takes some experimenting. So you're going to start on your end, you're going to try some curve, bring it up, and see how the point meets. As for the roof tiles, they just snap in really, really cleanly with the beams that you had already laid. So you start by laying the beam, and then you snap your roof tiles in. And as I mentioned previously, when working with the dark wood roof, it really blends so nicely. Like, these are not perfect. There's some overlap in there, but you really can't notice unless you are clicking through them. So yeah, there's that. Knock that beam out, because that doesn't belong there. All right, yeah, add a prominent front face, because that is really going to make your house pop. Level 6, add a vertical extension, aka more heights. We built our strong stone foundation, and I talked about building height earlier on, but this is really what you're able to accomplish when building with stone, is you're able to build a house that's shaped more vertically. And so that's what I wanted to kind of try to showcase here. So yeah, as you can see, this is our addition that we added up here. It's kind of a little tower over the base of our house, a little bit offset from the front face of our house. This way, you know, we still have this roof intact and it looks really nice. I aimed to center this with the roofs that we had already established for our patio and for the first extension. So it's nice and centered over there. And the other thing you'll notice, and this is what helped us achieve the height here, is I increased the height of our stone wall on the backside. And this is a little sub tip that I like to do with a lot of my stone houses, is as we come along inside here, I think stone houses look really nice when at least one of the walls is stone kind of all the way up, or most of the way up, or more of the way up. So here we have what I would consider to be like our living room, and we got this nice log cabin aesthetic, and we got our nice glass windows where we can see the sun coming through. But as we turn around, we got the stone background, so we really see that blending of materials, and you don't just get all core wood or all stone or all wood at any given time. So you get a nice, it's the contrast and the blending that really makes things look pretty in this game. So I extended this stone wall up, which allowed me to build higher. And as you can look up, you can kind of see this cool little tower that we've got going on up there. Yeah, let's just float up a little bit so we can see what we're working with up here. I'm using those dark wood dividers. So here I just created a couple different kind of window patterns. And don't yet know what we want this room to be. I'm thinking some kind of loft bedroom, something like that. Therefore, we have the hanging braziers hanging on the outside, and that will act as a fire for us. So if we can make a bed up here, we will be able to sleep in it. Something to always be mindful of. Yeah, and just kind of played around with the patterns for the windows, using the different layered the wood walls and the inverted wood walls. To create little triangles on the bottom, triangles on the top. A diamond shape is always a super cool thing to do with a window. And this can be achieved by, you have your natural roof tile, you can just drop it down by 1 meter, and then from that 1 meter beam, you can add your other beams, so on and so forth. I'm going to knock them out. It's just to kind of show you how you can do it. Now I'm going to zip outside and we can take a look at this from out there. All right, so I really started with a square stone tower, essentially. I had already worked with core wood on the level below, so I wanted to start working with some regular wood. Let's kind of just showcase all of our materials. Why not? So I built this up, and then, I wanted it to kind of pop out on all sides. So I started using these, the eye corners, which I stands for inside, in case that wasn't obvious, because that was not obvious to me for a good couple of years that I used these. And that allows us to create these, at this point, it's half window, it's half dormer almost. But yeah, it allows us to create windows on all 4 sides, and it adjusts the angle of our roof on all 4 sides. Now, you might think I got a lot going on here, and that is true. This looks a little wild. I've extended little overhangs on all 4 sides. I added ladders, from the last video, that I love adding ladders to detail, and then I lined those with the beams on the outside, and I even popped them out a little bit more with the 1 meter spikes. And this one might look a little excessive, but there's actually a reason that these beams exist, and that is because if we're doing our dark wood trim in here, that's going to pop through on your roof, but you can cover that up nice and easily by just manually holding shift down and placing that there and placing that there. And I think that looks pretty good. But if you're not feeling all of this other stuff, if it looks a little too busy for you, you don't have to build with that. You can kind of tone it down. Sometimes you just, I think, the way we build is a little bit of a reflection of the way we're feeling that day. And maybe I was going through something when I put this together, but it looks a little chaotic, but we're going to trim it down a little bit in the future iterations of this build. Yeah, and then just a nice little simple pop out to go up above the extended stone wall that we built out here. But yeah, we're building our stone house. Now you can really see this is coming together. This is looking like a pretty cool, legitimate house. We got our height, we got our front face, we've got our extension. Let's move on to level 7 and see what's next. Level 7, chimneys. You knew it was coming. We have to add a chimney to our house. So let's go around the back. We built our stone wall all the way up, so now I'm attaching a chimney to it. It's the side of the house that just made the most sense for a chimney. Let's take a look at what I've got going on here. So a chimney is always something you can add to at your house. And honestly, I mean, I almost feel like every real house deserves a chimney. It adds that layer of depth. It makes it pop out a little bit more. Now this looks a little bulky and stone blocky for right now, and just be aware we're gonna continue to touch this up. There are no mistakes when building. As Bob Ross always said, only happy little accidents. There's nothing that we can't brush up and touch up later on. So, as far as this chimney goes, I built it out of stone. Last time we did wooden chimneys. This is a stone house build, so we're gonna build some stone chimneys. And I added, for right now, some core wood detailing. I personally, I don't enjoy just like huge flat surfaces or a monochrome, if that's the correct word to use here, all gray. So I like to add a little bit of contrast by at least doing some detailing with the wood, just to, at least just as a placeholder for right now. The other thing that you're gonna notice here is I've got 2 forges in there, or 2 hearths in there. And of course, you'll notice I have windows on the outside. This is something that I personally love to do with my chimneys. I think it adds a lot of character from the outside. It's really cool. Maybe if we toggle to the nighttime, you can kind of see the fires glowing on the inside. So another thing I love to do, I didn't do it in this one though, is you can even pop this open, and you can have an outdoor space here where maybe you have like a little balcony or a little windowsill or whatever, and a little camp area built up around here. You can flatten out the ground with the hoe, and you can set up a little, some benches. You can set up some food off to the side. You can, bake a few pies and toss them here on the windowsill, just like they did in the old days. And you kind of have a dual-sided, dual-purpose chimney. Just all little things that you could do. I'm gonna turn the daylight back on. But yeah, I love adding these little windows from the outside because you get to see the light on the inside. You see the smoke lighting up. And I love adding multiple layers to my chimneys. And as long as you have enough distance between your first floor and your second floor, you can do that. So we come inside here and we've got our hearth in the basement, and that's going to have a purpose later on. And we've got our hearth in the first floor, which this can be a family room or it can become a kitchen. And yeah, it all flows up to the chimney above. And last thing we'll just take a real quick look at is, a little bit of detailing on the roof of the chimney. Your chimneys do need roofs over it, or else when it rains, the fires will go out. So, I just kind of capped it off with our little dark wood roof, kept going with the theme of the dividers. One thing you might note is when I have my little slit for the smoke to come through here, and I added my 2-meter beam, I didn't just from that point cap the roof. I kind of popped it out a little bit, created a little bit more of an overhang, allowed us to do a little centerpiece. And I think, again, just adding a little bit more depth wherever I could. And I kind of like the little overhang that this creates right here. But yeah, there we go. Level 7. We got our chimney in. Level 8. Add a true second floor. Yes, that's right. Another tip that amounts to adding more height. But bear with me. Alright, you can see what we added here. We added this roof, the second floor, up above our first floor, that extends all the way across. Now I did this for a couple reasons. Again, sometimes it's just a matter of iterating. You build your build, and sometimes it's necessity that breeds what you build next. And in this case, you'll remember we had that large tower that we looked up, and it was a question of how the heck are we going to get up there? I'd like to try to build staircases, and I couldn't quite finagle a staircase to get up there, or if I were to build like a ladder tower, that was going to take up my entire living rooms, and I didn't want to do that. So by building my second floor here, I was able to build a nice little staircase up, and I have this little entryway when you come up, and then we've got a back room here, its own unique room and a room over here. And I created this nice little balcony on the outside. So this is balcony part 2. We built one balcony earlier. Why not build a second? You can never have too many balconies. And I decorated this one with some iron beams instead. So yeah, I added this second floor, and I continued our log cabin theme. I thought this on this floor, log cabin continued to work well, and then we could reserve the regular wood for the tower up above. And I think you can see I toned down some of the detail on this a little bit at this phase. But yeah, this is really sleek. It comes all the way across, and I lined this up so that it goes directly over our extension that we added and over our patio. And you know, we got our little arches here to kind of support it. I worked with symmetry here. So this second floor is completely symmetrical on both sides. It's an even 8 meters across, and then we've got the little overhang cover, 8 meters across, overhang cover, and this tower is directly in the middle. It's worth talking about symmetry a little bit. I personally find that, you know, the best builds incorporate symmetry, but they're not restricted by exclusively being symmetrical. And as you can look at this build here, maybe it looks funky to you, maybe it's not to your taste. You're free to build completely symmetrical, or you're free to build, you know, this wonky, sprawling, crazy build. But it's all a matter of what looks nice to you. But I think it's worth not being held back by you know, having to adhere to symmetry. But in this case, I thought adding symmetry up here looked really nice, but the build on a whole is not symmetrical. You got the second floor is overhanging on this side, whereas it's not even coming to the end of this extension on this side. We got nice vertical symmetry with these towers here. They line up perfectly. But when you look at it from this side, it's not symmetrical horizontally all the way across. We get the chimney in the back and this right here. So yeah, play around with those. Just something worth thinking about. Level 9 dormers. You knew this one was coming too. One of my favorite things to add to any build. Let's take a look at them. This one's going to be pretty quick. You might think we're getting really busy up there, but you know, as long as you have a surface to play with, you can always add a little bit more detail. And you know, like I said, I think I was just feeling a little crazy that day, so we went for it. I added these dormers on the top of our roof here, and really they're kind of just extensions of the roof. I believe these would be categorized as wall dormers, similar to our last build with our wooden house. But you know, they add these extra little element of vertical depth, a little horizontal depth, and they just give a little bit more personality to our build overall. And it's achieved by simply, you know, knocking out the two of the walls and, you know, create beams going across from one side of the roof to the other side of the roof. And then you can build your walls up from them, and then from those walls build your little roof tiles, which go in the opposite direction of the roof that's below it. And then yeah, I just created our, you know, angled walls here and a little mini balconies. I said earlier, can't have too many balconies. Technically, I guess these still count as balconies even if you cannot walk out onto them. But yeah, adds a bunch more personality from the outside. And if we come around and look at them from the inside, if we can get in there, it adds this nice little space, and you actually see the ambient glow from the sconces that I have attached to the outside there. So you can't really see the balconies from here, but it adds like this roof window, and it creates an additional source of lighting and allows shadows to play on the insides all the more. Probably feels even cooler at night if we take a quick look. Yeah, look at that. You got that warm glow up there, and you can see the stars. So we added a skylight in our previous build, and this kind of serves the same function. It's really awesome in this game when you're inside and you get to like look around. I like wide open spaces. I like lots of windows because I enjoy soaking in the scenery outside. This game really does look beautiful, particularly the way it plays on light, and adding things like dormers really help enhance that experience. So yeah, that's my dormer tip with our stone house. Level 10A, detailing. Sounds like a job for a before and after montage. Right, let's talk about detailing for a little bit, and I'm going to try to keep this brief because I am aware that this video is becoming quite lengthy at this point. So detailing. Detailing is what brings every section of your building or structure to life. This is where you design your windows, where you add extra balconies, where you finalize your lighting, where you can add overhangs or touch up surfaces or hide blemishes. The aim is always going to be to add more depth. What can you do to each section to make it pop out just a little bit more? As for how to add details, well, that's entirely up to you. And I'll return to my adage that I keep trying to express, which is experiment, iterate, explore, and most importantly, look to other builders for inspiration. Almost nothing that you see in my builds was an original invention by me. At this point, this game has been out for 2 years and builders have been creating and sharing stuff, and there's been so many amazing builders out there building that, you know, we're all using each other's ideas. I credited Verso earlier with these columns. I believe he's the creator of that. These stools in windows like this was a technique that became popular just before Hearth and Home released last fall, or 2 falls ago at this point. And when Hearth and Home came out, of course, it brought these darkwood dividers. Maybe if these dividers existed in the game, this technique would have never been invented. But these are all things that people have come up with over time, and you know, we can become inspired by looking at other things that other people built. So I'm not going to go through all of the things I did here. You can go back through the little before and after montage to just kind of look at some of the finer points. But yeah, that's the general gist. Detailing brings your structure and your building to life. It really gives it that final finishing personality, and you can do that on just about any surface. Maybe I'll talk about this one really quick just because it's one of my favorite little things. And it's a perfect example of being inspired by something else. This is nothing I would have ever thought of on my own. However, I had bookmarked a build. It was titled something like Traditional Korean Home. This build is like a year and a half old. It was an incredible little build, and they built little windows that just used wooden beams like this, kind of in this haphazard manner, and it looked really, really cool. And then when it came time for me wanting to add some details to these big, boring stone surfaces, I thought to add, you know, my mind wandered back to that, and that little thing that I had bookmarked served as the inspiration for this. So that's the truest tip here. So that's it live and in action. Note, you can do this kind of detailing throughout your build. For each section, as you build it, particularly if you're confident that you know the full shape of your build is going to be. If you're the kind of builder who can envision your whole build beforehand, that is amazing. If not, if you're like me, then just about every single wall is subject to dramatic change throughout the process. So I find it personally useful to hold off on a lot of the major detailing until really the full shape of my build has crystallized, and then I can all at once kind of do this wonderful little step where you just kind of polish up every surface of the build, and you see that, like, the satisfying before and after transformation. All right, before continuing, let's talk about these vines I've got up here. I received a great number of comments from viewers interested in what mods I use for building, so I'd like to address that super quickly. One short answer is that I use no mods that change the way building in Valheim works. Essentially, everything you see in my buildings and structures can be built in vanilla. That said, there are 3 mods that I personally do use that have a building function, and they are Plant Everything, Fuel Eternal, and No Rain Damage. Now, I talked about Plant Everything in my last video. This is a mod that I will continue to advocate for until the devs include this feature in the base game, which I'm still holding out hope that they'll do. This mod simply adds all of the game's natural plants that exist in the game to the cultivator. So you've got your shrubs, different kinds of bushes. You've got your blueberry bushes and your raspberry bushes, and these all have costs associated with them. So raspberry bushes cost 5 raspberries to plant. So if you're playing survival and you're playing progression, you need to gather your raspberries before you can plant this bush. And then after you've gathered 5 raspberries, you can plant a bush, and then gradually over time you can harvest that bush 5 times, and you can get your return on your investment. And you can kind of eventually get a little raspberry garden. You can plant mushrooms, you can plant thistle, you can plant these small little trees. And it really does a lot to add to the space. That's kind of how you see a lot of these trees here. I've planted with the cultivator, and some of the smaller trees, some smaller bushes, just to make it not feel like this big, barren, open area. So that is Plant Everything, and that, of course, leads us to the vines. These vines you probably have encountered in the world. They show up in the game in various procedurally generated structures, like those stone towers that you see in the Black Forest, or in the mountains, or the diverger huts that you encounter in Mistlands. These show up, and they always look so cool when you find them out there in the world. So I'm still hoping the devs allow us to build with these one day. But as you can see, I added some vines on here, overlapping with the wood and the stone. It just creates this awesome natural looking feel. So really, when I built this wooden structure right here, I did it with the vines in mind. You know, having the openings between the 1 meter beams like that, and then having like the vines kind of grow and appear as if they're crawling through, creates this awesome little effect. So that was, yeah, I was going for something natural there. All right, the 2 other mods, I'll just talk about them very quickly. Fuel Eternal, you'll notice I've got all these lights around here, and they're all full of fuel. So that's all that mod does. It allows you, your lights that you build, so you still have to use the resin or the wood or whatever, or the coal to create your items up front, but then they will stay forever lit, no need for maintenance. That is very useful for me as a builder who just builds with, if I'm just interested in creating like a big massive build and not constantly having to run back just to refuel. I have one build that's just, it's so massive, it would take me probably about 20 minutes to run the full gauntlet just to relight all of the torches. So to save myself that agony, I use this mod. Now that also allows me to build things like these braziers outside the windows, which provides the source of warmth for beds inside, and I don't have to worry about relighting that. So you might have to reconsider your design a little bit, or you can always just from inside knock out one of these and then go light the brazier and then build it again. A little annoying, but it's totally doable within the base game. And all right, last mod, no rain damage. It does exactly what it sounds like it does. It prevents things like this, these horizontal beams of wood that I just have chilling out here, from ever getting rain damage. I think these would be protected by the roof, but if they weren't, for example, these would get rain damage without it. And just in general, and we'll see a little bit more in the next step, wink wink, I love building with wood outdoors. I love building docks. I love building custom little wooden fences, little wooden furniture things, umbrellas, and not having to worry about repairing that constantly really increases my personal enjoyment of building this game. And really, that's the prevailing message I want to convey. There's no right or wrong way to play, so play whichever way is most fun for you. For me, these 3 little mods have allowed me to get so much more enjoyment out of building in this game. So for everybody who asked me those questions, those are really the only 3 mods that I use that have anything related to building. Level 10B. Landscaping. We can't end our build without doing some landscaping. All right, let's cue another cinematic montage. There she is in all her glory. Just as important as adding details to our house itself is adding details to the space around the house. This is, this is an extension of our build, is the space around our house, and this helps define our build's place in the world and the environment. Really, you achieve that nice, clean look just by creating the spaces, by adding little borders and boundaries that end up on creating spaces and sections, and then you can give each section like its own little purpose and its little story. The easiest way to achieve that sectioning off of things is to create a little fence, and you'll notice I just have that fence running along most of my build. And I'm not going to talk about everything inside this build. We made good use of the plant everything mod, of course, which I talked about already. That's true landscaping, but landscaping also involves all of the space around and everything you do with it, including adding little roads, adding fences, adding clutter. Like this stuff, this maybe is a primary shipping road, and there's going to be carts and wagons coming by to pick this stuff up. And walk around the back here. I've got an outdoor barbecue area. What do you need when you have an outdoor barbecue area? You need some wood for the fire. So, do little wood stacks. Make use of all the little building materials that we've got going on here. And we got a higher fence back here. We said, I said earlier I wanted to do something fun underneath here. Well, we needed a forge, and this seemed like as good a spot as any to build a forge. So yeah, and you don't have to settle at just building your forge and all of its crafting pieces. Have a little fun with it, play around. I put it up on a platform, and I added another little platform, and I created a little cabinet above it using our the wood shutters. Decorated a little bit with your shield and the stuff that you create as a blacksmith. A couple armor stands, stone cutters. Hey, when you got a stone cutter, let's add some piles of stone near the stone cutters, just to kind of integrate it into your world, into the build, to make it all make sense. Your coal output, rather than tossing your coal in a bunch of chests, make piles of coal in the ground. Simple little things like that. It was around Christmas time, so I was still a little bit in the holiday spirit here, so that's what I ended up on decorating our columns with. And we got the Christmas banners up there. And along this side, I thought maybe let's just create a little hint of a road that just ventures off up into the mountains here. Of course, this is the end of my building grounds. There is nothing up there. If we open up the map, looks like we do have some mountains. So, maybe this road would just wind its way up here. And then maybe you have, a ski lodge or some other kind of fun little build up in the mountains, and you want to build an access road to get up there. Highly encourage, kind of making the whole world as immersive as possible. Your build is your build, but this whole world is your playground. So, yeah, fun little stuff like that. Just detail and define the space. Ooh, a little trick I learned here as I just noticed this. This was an accident, talking about happy little accidents. I was just going to create a little garden using our 1 meter beams, but I think from a previous section, had a banner selected. Oh, I'm not allowed to do this right now as Eikthyrs. It was allowing me previously, I swear, to build this banner on the ground like that, and that is how I achieved this. Well, we're just, weird. Oh, if you do it up against, here's the trick. If you do it up against the stone like this, or another object, you can build these in, and then you can build it off of itself as well. See, we're learning together here in the video. So it actually creates the illusion of like a thin piece of wood that doesn't actually exist in the game. So I thought that was kind of cool. Looked nice there. Let's walk around just to our front. You can see our dock. Oh, that beautiful light. And it's just the final little piece. Our building is on the water, so we do want to create a dock. And this is more of a big boy build. Last time we built a meadows thing, so we just had a little raft out front, but now we've got the long ship, and we've got a bigger dock, double the width. And this is just a tiny little thing that you can do with your docks to create a little lower step down. This way you can just grab the ladder, and now you're hopped right in. And before we end the video, I do just want to do a brief tour through the inside. This was not an interior decorating focus video, so I haven't fully furnished this house, but I just did want to show you what we got going on. I just kind of created the space inside a little bit more, so we got a nice little space downstairs in our basement to sit by the fire, and we can mount some things up there. Little trick, again, inspiration from other people, other posters on Reddit or YouTubers. I saw somebody else do this with the carpets, and I thought it was awesome. Requires the use of a board first, and then you can place the carpet on top of the board, and then you can remove the board, and you're left with just the carpet. Nifty little trick. I don't know how it looks down there, but it looks good in other circumstances. Coming up here, I converted this into a kitchen. It made more sense. I think we needed a kitchen somewhere, so that's what I did with this little section here. Some little cabinetry over there, and this is one of my favorite things to do. I don't like interior decorating in this game too much, but I do love creating spaces underneath staircases. I just think it's so perfect. Perfect little places for storage. You can do a bunch of chests, or you can just make it like an actual cabinet the way this kind of looks, where you can stack whatever. It can become a bookcase. You can have your potions stacked on there. You can have a chest underneath there. I don't think I've got anything under there, but it creates the illusion of space. A little storage area where maybe you got some spare stools. Again, we're just trying to create an immersive world, not necessarily going for full Valheim functionality, because when it comes down to it in Valheim, you don't need too much for functionality. You just need your forge, your workbench, your kitchen, your smelter. You don't need any of this stuff, but we're not building for function. We're building to create nice little cozy houses and spaces. All right, we got one bedroom up here, and yeah, I don't think I showed this earlier. You can see from our detail and like little bay windows now how it adds this nice little window ledge, and maybe you can put books, use little item stands and dress that up a little bit. It creates a little bit more space in here, and you got those awesome sun rays shining through on this side. You can look up into our loft from down here, and you can look up there. One more time, talked about that earlier. I sealed this side off to kind of give this bedroom a little bit more privacy, and this way it really has become its own room. Again, got the same little windowsills going on back here, and this is the one that has its own private personal balcony. And then lastly, just the attic loft, and added this little balcony in front of here. Didn't really come inside before with our detailed video, so you can see what it's like from inside now. It's just an experience as you're walking up the stairs. Allows a little bit more light to shine through. It makes the experience of walking up these stairs into this attic just a little bit more pleasant. And then up here, added my traditional bunk beds. It's a little tradition I have with my friends from my shared server. I always create some bunk beds, some room for them to sleep over if we need to. And once again, sunlight. Lighting in this game is really just what creates the beauty. Anyway, there you have it. That's the little interior tour. That is the tour of this build. That concludes the 10 steps. I really, really, really hope you guys enjoyed this. It was a heck of a project to make. I was very intimidated to do a follow-up to the first one, and given how well received that first one was, I still continue to be overwhelmed by the reception for that. You know, I knew I had ideas for this one, but I knew it was going to become complicated, and I know sometimes simple is better, so I was afraid of erring on the side of complex, but I really do think I followed the same formula. We start with our basic house, our basic box, and then we converted it to stone. We added a little bit of height. We added this extension over here, and then what did we add next? We added the staircase, and we kind of redefined our basement and our first floor, and then we added even more height. We added this section up here, and then I think I added the chimney in the back, and then we added this true second floor, and then we added some dormers. We improved our front face to dress that up, which you could have done during the detailing phase. Didn't have to do it that early. I just kind of wanted to change it up a little bit, but as you can see, we didn't really change any details of this as we advanced. That really does belong in the detailing kind of section. And yeah, ultimately we did some landscaping, and I'm really pleased with how it turned out overall. And at different phases I wasn't quite sure about it, and again, a lot of iterating went into this. I must have changed certain parts so many times, but yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Really look forward to doing more videos like this. Feel free to leave comments asking your requests for types of videos like this I'd like to do. I'm kind of considering I'll definitely try to do a Mistlands one with the Mistlands material, but I'm toying around with some other ideas, such as like how to build a Tudor house or how to build a Victorian house, and like step by step, like things you can add to those things. Because really, if we're just doing how to build stone or how to build with wood, we're running out of options pretty fast. So I'm coming up with some ideas. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and see you next time.